The message came on a Tuesday morning, and it changed everything. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a bunker that had been built to survive nuclear war, Admiral Patricia Cole was drinking her third cup of coffee when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed across every wall. Screens flickered and changed to show something that should have been impossible. 12,000 alien warships had just appeared near Jupiter. Lieutenant Kevin Brooks ran into the command center, his face pale with fear. He was young, barely 30 years old, and he had never seen anything like this. None of them had. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. "Admiral," Kevin said, his voice shaking, "we're receiving a transmission. It's being broadcast on every frequency. Every phone, every television, every radio on Earth is picking it up." Patricia set down her coffee cup and nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The screen changed to show a creature that looked like nothing from Earth. It was tall and covered in a hard shell that shimmered with colors that had no name in any human language. It had too many arms and eyes that looked like they were made of 1,000 tiny pieces. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, translated by technology humanity could not understand. "Creatures of Earth," the alien said. "I am Supreme Commander Velthos of the Zithrani Collective. Your world now belongs to us. You have 1 day to surrender. If you do not, we will destroy everything. There will be no mercy. There will be no escape. Your time as a free species is over." The transmission ended. Silence filled the command center. Kevin looked at the Admiral with wide eyes. "Ma'am, what do we do? Their fleet is massive. Our satellites are counting over 12,000 ships. We can't possibly fight that many." Patricia stared at the screen for a long moment. The tactical display showed the alien fleet spreading out across the solar system like a dark cloud. They were moving toward Earth with clear purpose. They meant every word of their threat. And then Admiral Patricia Cole did something that shocked everyone in the room. She laughed. It started as a small chuckle, but it grew into a full, genuine laugh that filled the entire command center. She laughed until tears ran down her cheeks, until she had to hold on to her chair to keep from falling over. Kevin stared at her like she had lost her mind. "Admiral, are you all right?" Patricia wiped her eyes and caught her breath. She was still smiling when she looked at her young officer. "Lieutenant, get me a secure line to Fleet Command, and have someone make more coffee. It's going to be a long day, but not for the reasons you think." "I don't understand," Kevin said. Patricia pointed at the screen showing the alien fleet. "Those poor creatures have been flying through space for 6,000 years to get here." 6,000 years, Lieutenant. Do you have any idea how long that is?" Kevin shook his head slowly. "When they left their homeworld," Patricia explained, "humans were still building pyramids. We hadn't invented writing yet. We thought the sun was a god and the stars were holes in the sky. That's the humanity they think they're coming to conquer." She turned to face the entire command center, where dozens of officers were watching her with confusion and hope. They have no idea what we've become. The same scene played out across the planet. In Beijing, General Liu Wei watched the alien transmission and smiled the smile of a man who knew a secret. In London, Prime Minister Susan Black called an emergency meeting and spent the first 5 minutes calming down officials who didn't understand why she wasn't panicking. In New York, Moscow, Tokyo, and 100 other cities, leaders gathered and prepared not for war, but for what they were already calling the welcoming. Because humanity had known about the Zithrani for a very long time. 300 years ago, human deep space sensors had detected the alien fleet approaching. At first, there had been fear. Scientists studied the distant ships and calculated their course. The aliens were heading straight for Earth, and their fleet was enormous. Panic spread through the population. But 300 years is a long time. Humanity had used that time wisely. They had built. They had prepared. They had advanced their technology beyond anything the Zithrani could imagine. The aliens were still using the same ships they had left with 6,000 years ago. Humanity had gone from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. They had gone from splitting atoms to harnessing the power of stars. They had gone from fighting each other to standing united as a single species. The Zithrani thought they were coming to conquer primitive creatures who lived in mud huts and feared fire. They were about to meet a civilization that had spent 6 millennia growing into something incredible. In orbit around Neptune, far from the approaching alien fleet, the real human military waited. 200 warships, each one the size of a small city, floated in the darkness between planets. They were made of materials that didn't exist when the Zithrani had started their journey. They carried weapons that bent the laws of physics in ways the aliens couldn't understand. They were crewed by men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Commander Rachel Torres stood on the bridge of the flagship, a vessel named New Dawn, and watched the alien fleet on her display. She was 60 years old, though she looked 30 thanks to medical technology that had made aging a choice rather than a requirement. Her crew was calm and ready. "Commander," her tactical officer said, "we're receiving orders from Earth Command. Admiral Cole wants us to move into position." Rachel nodded. "Tell the fleet to prepare for jump. It's time to introduce ourselves." "Yes, ma'am." "What about weapons?" Rachel smiled, the same smile that had appeared on the faces of humans all over the solar system. "Leave them cold for now. We're not going to need them." The officer looked confused but didn't question the order. Across the solar system, the Zithrani fleet continued its approach toward Earth. They had no idea that their invasion had become a joke. They had no idea that the species they had come to destroy had been waiting for them for 3 centuries. They had no idea that their entire understanding of humanity was 6,000 years out of date. Supreme Commander Velthos stood on his bridge and watched Earth grow larger in his viewing screen. Soon, he thought, the conquest would begin. Soon, his people would have a new home. Soon, everything they had worked for across the endless dark years of travel would be worth it. He had no idea that humanity was laughing at him, but he was about to find out. The human shuttle landed in the main hangar of the Eternal Conquest without any weapons pointed at it. This was perhaps the strangest thing that had ever happened on a Zithrani warship. For 6,000 years, every vessel that approached their fleet had been treated as a potential enemy. Now 3 humans walked out of their ship with nothing but friendly expressions on their faces. Admiral Patricia Cole led the group. Behind her walked Dr. Maria Santos, a woman with dark hair and kind eyes who specialized in meeting new species. The third human was Captain Henry Liu, a cultural expert who'd spent decades studying how different peoples could learn to understand each other. Zithrani warriors lined the hangar walls, their weapons ready but not aimed. They watched the humans with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. These small, soft creatures had somehow built a civilization that made the mighty Zithrani look like children. It was almost impossible to believe. Commander Velthos met them at the center of the hangar. He was taller than any of the humans, his shell-covered body designed for combat, his many arms capable of wielding multiple weapons at once. But standing before Admiral Cole, he felt small. "Welcome to the Eternal Conquest," he said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. He had never welcomed anyone to his ship before. "I have gathered my senior officers to hear what you have to say." "Thank you, Commander," Cole replied. "We appreciate your willingness to listen." They walked through the corridors of the massive warship, and the humans looked around with open interest. Maria studied the alien technology with the eyes of a scientist. Henry examined the decorations on the walls. the symbols of conquest and victory that covered every surface. Your people have a rich history, Henry observed. These markings tell stories of great battles and conquered worlds. Velthos nodded with pride that felt hollow now. The Zithrani have never been defeated. We have brought 17 species under our control. We are the masters of 3 star systems. And yet here you are, Maria said gently, facing a species you cannot defeat. How does that feel? The question caught Velthos off guard. No one had ever asked him how he felt about anything. Feelings were not important to the Zithrani. Only strength mattered. Only victory. I do not know, he admitted. I have never experienced this before. They reached the strategy chamber, a large room filled with holographic displays and surrounded by Velthos's most senior officers. The Zithrani commanders watched the humans enter with barely hidden hostility. They did not like this situation. They did not understand why their supreme commander was negotiating instead of fighting. Maria stepped forward to address the group. Her voice was calm and warm, like she was talking to old friends instead of alien warriors. I want to start by acknowledging something, she said. Your people have accomplished incredible things. You built ships that could travel between stars. You survived a journey of 6,000 years through empty space. You kept your culture and your purpose alive across hundreds of generations. That takes strength that most species don't have. The Zithrani officers shifted uncomfortably. They had expected threats or demands. Praise was unexpected. But I also want to be honest with you, Maria continued. The purpose that kept you going, the dream of conquering Earth, that dream is dead. It died the moment your ancestors left their home world. They just didn't know it yet. Humanity was never going to stay primitive. We were always going to grow. She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy spreading out in all directions. There are approximately 400 billion stars in this galaxy, she said. Humanity has explored maybe 2% of them. We found wonders beyond description. We found planets covered in crystal forests that sing when the wind blows. We found moons made entirely of diamond. We found clouds of gas that glow with every color of the rainbow. The universe is so much bigger and more beautiful than any of us imagined. She turned to face Velthos directly. And there's room for everyone. That's what we've learned in our 6,000 years of growing. There's no need for conquest when there's abundance. There's no need for war when there's more than enough for all. One of the Zithrani officers stepped forward angrily. His name was Commander Threx, and he was known for his fierce devotion to the old ways. This is weakness talking, Threx spat. You offer us peace because you fear us. You know that the Zithrani are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. You hope to defeat us with soft words instead of honest battle. Admiral Cole looked at Threx with an expression that was almost sad. Commander Threx, she said, your fleet has approximately 12,000 ships. Each one is armed with the best weapons your species could build 6,000 years ago. If every single one of those weapons fired at the same time, at the same target, you might be able to damage one of our smaller vessels. She let that sink in before continuing. We don't fear you. We can't fear you. You're not a threat to us in any meaningful way. We're here because we choose to be, because we believe that your people deserve a chance at something better than endless war. Threx opened his mouth to respond, but Velthos raised a hand to silence him. What exactly would this better future look like? Velthos asked, if we accept your offer, what happens to us? Henry stepped forward with a gentle smile. First, we help your people find a place to live. Real planets, with real air and real sunlight. Your generation ships have been home for too long. Your children deserve to know what grass feels like under their feet. He brought up images of human worlds, planets covered in green forests and blue oceans, cities that blended with nature instead of fighting it. Then we share our technology with you. Medical advances that will cure diseases you've struggled with for millennia. Energy systems that will free your people from scarcity. Transportation methods that will let you travel anywhere in the galaxy in moments instead of centuries. Maria picked up the explanation. And most importantly, we share our knowledge. Not just technical knowledge, but the lessons we've learned about how to live together. How to resolve conflicts without violence. How to build societies where everyone has value. How to find meaning in creation instead of destruction. We're not asking you to forget who you are, Cole added. Your history, your culture, your traditions, those things matter. The traditions can grow and change without being lost. Your ancestors were warriors because they had to be. Your descendants can be something else, something they choose for themselves. The chamber fell silent. The Zithrani officers looked at each other, at their commander, at the humans who stood before them, offering a future that seemed impossible. Velthos thought about everything he had heard. He thought about the children on the generation ships, learning to fight from the moment they could walk. He thought about the endless cycle of war and conquest that had defined his people for longer than Earth's recorded history. And he thought about what it might mean to break that cycle. If we refuse, he said slowly, you will truly let us go? You won't destroy us or take us prisoner. We will escort you to the edge of our system and release you, Cole confirmed. We won't harm you, but we also won't help you, and you'll have to find your own way in a galaxy that has moved on without you. Velthus closed his many eyes and made the hardest decision of his life. I cannot speak for all my people, he said, but I can speak for myself. I am tired of war. I am tired of teaching children that their only value is in how many enemies they can kill. I am tired of a future that looks exactly like the past. He opened his eyes and met Admiral Cole's gaze. Show me this better way. Let me see if it is real. Cole smiled, and for the first time since the Zithrani had arrived in the Sol system, hope began to bloom in the cold spaces between the stars. Supreme Commander Velthos had never known fear. He had conquered 17 species across 3 star systems. He had led armies that numbered in the millions. He had watched worlds burn and felt nothing but pride. The Zithrani were warriors, and Velthos was the greatest warrior of them all. But standing on the bridge of his flagship, watching the impossible happen, Velthos felt something cold crawl through his body. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. It was terror. Space itself was tearing open. The first human ship appeared 30 kilometers from the Eternal Conquest, emerging from what looked like a crack in reality. One moment there was empty space, and the next moment there was a warship so large it blocked out the stars behind it. It was beautiful and terrifying, all sharp angles and glowing lights, made of metals that shimmered with colors Velthos had never seen. Then another ship appeared, and another. Within 5 minutes, 200 human vessels had materialized throughout the Zithrani fleet. They hadn't flown in from somewhere. They hadn't been hiding. They had simply appeared, as if they had stepped through invisible doors in the fabric of space. Velthos gripped the railing of his command platform so hard his claws left marks in the metal. How is this possible? Our sensors showed nothing. Where did they come from? His tactical officer was shaking, his many arms trembling over the control panels. Commander, I don't understand. They're not using any propulsion system I recognize. They're not moving through space. They're folding it. They're jumping from point to point instantly. That's impossible, Velthos said. But his voice was weak because the proof was right in front of him. The largest human ship, which dwarfed even the Eternal Conquest, was now directly beside them. It was close enough that Velthos could see details on its hull. He could see gun ports the size of buildings. He could see energy shields that glowed with soft blue light. He could see a civilization's worth of technology packed into a single vessel. His communication screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was a female, older but strong, with gray hair and eyes that held no fear at all. She was smiling. "Supreme Commander Velthos," she said, "welcome to the Sol System. I'm Admiral Patricia Cole of the United Earth Navy. I thought it would be polite to say hello before we go any further." Velthos tried to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. His people had spent 6,000 years traveling through the darkness between stars. They had sacrificed everything. Generations had been born, lived, and died on the generation ships, all for this moment. And now a human was greeting him like he was a guest who had arrived for dinner. "You seem surprised," Admiral Cole continued. "I suppose that's fair. The last time your ancestors checked on us, we were still figuring out how to make bronze swords. Things have changed a bit since then." "How?" Velthos finally managed. "How is any of this possible?" The Admiral's smile grew wider. 6,000 years is a very long time, Commander. Would you like me to explain?" She didn't wait for him to answer. The screen changed to show images that made Velthos feel like he was dreaming. He saw human cities that floated in the clouds of Jupiter. He saw mining operations on asteroids that stretched across thousands of kilometers. He saw a ring of stations around Earth's sun, collecting energy and beaming it to every corner of the solar system. He saw ships jumping through folded space, traveling distances in seconds that would take his fleet years to cross. 4,000 years ago, Cole explained, we figured out how to travel faster than light. We cracked the code of space itself and learned to bend it to our will. 3,000 years ago, we built our first Dyson swarm around the sun, giving us more energy than we could ever use. 2,000 years ago, we learned how to create matter from energy, ending scarcity forever. 1,000 years ago, we stopped dying of old age. We had solved all the problems that had plagued humanity for millennia. Velthos listened in silence, his mind struggling to accept what he was hearing. We've been watching you approach for 300 years, Cole continued. We saw your fleet coming and we prepared. Not for war, exactly, but for this meeting. We wanted to be ready. Ready for what? Velthos asked. Ready to show you the truth. Ready to prove that the species you came to conquer doesn't exist anymore. Humanity has grown up, Commander. We're not the primitives your ancestors saw 6,000 years ago. We're something else entirely. On the bridges of the other Zithrani ships, commanders watched their screens in disbelief. Human vessels surrounded them on all sides. Sensors screamed warnings about power readings that shouldn't exist. Weapons officers reported that their targeting systems couldn't lock onto the human ships because the ships kept moving in ways that made no sense. Back on the Eternal Conquest, Velthos' second-in-command moved close to him. Commander, what are your orders? Should we attack? Velthos looked at the human ships filling his viewport. He thought about the weapons they must carry, the technology they must possess. He thought about the certainty in Admiral Cole's eyes. No, he said quietly. We cannot win this fight. I don't think we ever could have. The Admiral seemed to hear him somehow. You're right about that, Commander. But here's the thing. We didn't come here to fight you. We came here to talk. So let's talk. Commander Rachel Torres watched from the bridge of the New Dawn as the Zithrani fleet went completely still. No weapons fired. No ships tried to run. The aliens just floated there, surrounded by human vessels, and waited. They're not attacking, her tactical officer said, sounding almost disappointed. I was looking forward to seeing our weapons in action. Rachel shook her head. That was never the plan. The Admiral wants to give them a chance. A chance to do what? Rachel looked at the alien ships, at the creatures inside them who had spent their whole existence preparing for a war they could never win. She felt something unexpected, pity. A chance to be something other than conquerors, she said. A chance to join us instead of fighting us. A chance to see that there's more to the universe than taking what belongs to others. The officer didn't look convinced. Do you really think they'll take it? I don't know, Rachel admitted. But we have to try. That's what makes us different from who we used to be. We have to at least try. Across the silent battlefield that wasn't, humans and Zithrani faced each other for the first time. 6,000 years of history hung in the balance. The future waited to be written. And somewhere, in the cold spaces between worlds, both species began to understand that everything was about to change. Commander Velthus demanded proof. He refused to believe that the humans had truly become so powerful. It had to be a trick, some kind of illusion designed to frighten his fleet into surrender. The Zithrani had studied war for longer than humans had existed as a species. They could not have fallen so far behind. Admiral Cole agreed to demonstrate. "Pick a target," she said through the communication screen. "Anything without life on it. An asteroid, a dead moon, whatever you want. We'll show you what we can do." Velthus pointed to a large asteroid on his tactical display. It was floating in the distance, nearly 1,000,000 kilometers away. It was made of solid iron and nickel, big enough to destroy a city if it hit a planet. "That one," he said. "If your weapons are so advanced, destroy it." Cole nodded and spoke to someone off-screen. A moment later, one of the smaller human ships, a vessel called Quiet Morning, turned toward the distant asteroid. A single flash of light left the ship, moving so fast that Velthus's sensors barely registered it. The asteroid exploded. It didn't just break apart. It turned into a cloud of white-hot gas that expanded outward in all directions. The energy release was so massive that Velthus's ship actually rocked slightly from the shockwave, even though they were nearly 1,000,000 kilometers away. "That was our smallest weapon," Cole said calmly. A simple kinetic round accelerated to 97% of light speed. "Would you like to see what our larger ships can do?" Velthus shook his head slowly. He had seen enough, but the demonstration was not over. A young human officer named Danny Reyes appeared on the screen next to Admiral Cole. He was smiling with the enthusiasm of someone who loved to teach. "Commander Velthus," Danny said, "I've been studying your fleet's technology. It's fascinating, really. Your ships use a form of fusion power for propulsion, and your weapons are based on directed energy and explosive projectiles. Very effective designs. They would have crushed any opponent from 6,000 years ago." "Get to the point," Velthus growled. Danny nodded. "The point is that your technology hasn't changed much since you left your home world. You perfected what you had, but you didn't invent anything new. Why would you? You were traveling through empty space with no resources and no challenges. You just had to survive until you reached Earth." He brought up a holographic display that showed the timeline of human advancement. "We had a different experience. We stayed on our planet fighting and competing and growing. Every generation built on the work of the one before. Every war taught us new lessons. Every crisis forced us to innovate. 6,000 years of constant pressure, constant change, constant improvement." The display showed human history in fast motion. Bronze Age gave way to Iron Age. Empires rose and fell. Humans spread across Earth, then into space. They built colonies on the Moon, on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They learned to travel faster than light. They learned to reshape matter with their minds. They learned to live forever. Your fleet represents the best technology of 6,000 years ago, Danny concluded. Our fleet represents the best technology of today. The gap between us is not something that can be overcome with courage or numbers. It's simply too large. Velthus felt the weight of those words pressing down on him. He had always believed that the Zithrani were the masters of the universe. Now he understood that they were not even close. "If you are so powerful," he said quietly, "why haven't you destroyed us already? Why talk? Why demonstrate? You could wipe out my entire fleet with a thought." Admiral Cole's expression changed. The smile faded, replaced by something more serious, more thoughtful. "Because we don't want to," she said. "Destroying you would be easy, but it would also be wrong. You came here expecting to find enemies, Commander. You found something else. You found a species that has learned, through great suffering and many mistakes, that there are better ways to live." She leaned closer to the screen. "We were like you once. Aggressive, violent, hungry for conquest. We fought each other for thousands of years. We nearly destroyed ourselves more times than I can count. But we survived, and we grew, and we learned. We learned that the universe is big enough for everyone. We learned that cooperation creates more than competition. We learned that life is precious and should be protected, not destroyed." Velthos didn't know how to respond. His entire culture was built on war and conquest. Every Zithrani child was raised to believe that strength meant domination, that honor meant victory over enemies. The idea that a powerful species would choose not to use its power was completely foreign to him. "I don't understand you," he admitted. "I know," Cole said gently, "but you might, given time. That's why we're here, Commander. Not to fight you, but to offer you a different path." On the Eternal Conquest, Velphus's officers watched their commander with growing confusion. They had expected battle. They had expected blood and fire and glory. Instead, they were receiving a lesson in philosophy from creatures they had planned to enslave. Second, Commander Kurthos moved to Velphus's side. "Commander, this could be a trap. They might be trying to make us lower our guard." "To what end?" Velthos replied. "You saw what their weapons can do. They don't need tricks or traps. If they wanted us dead, we would already be dead." He turned back to the screen, where Admiral Cole waited patiently. "What exactly are you offering?" he asked. "A choice," Cole said. "The first real choice your people have had in 6,000 years. You can continue on your current path, and we will escort you out of our system. We won't destroy you, but you'll have to find somewhere else to go. Or you can stay here and learn a new way. You can become part of something larger than conquest. You can give your children a future that isn't built on war." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Velthos thought about his fleet, about the millions of Zithrani who had been born and died on the generation ships. He thought about the children growing up right now, learning to fight, learning to hate, learning that the only purpose in life was to conquer or be conquered. He thought about what it would mean to tell them there was another way. "I need to speak with my people," he said finally. "This is not a decision I can make alone." Admiral Cole nodded with what looked like respect. "Take all the time you need, Commander. We've waited 300 years for this meeting. We can wait a little longer." The communication ended, leaving Velthos alone with his thoughts and his fleet, and the impossible choice that lay before him. For the first time in his long life, the great warrior didn't know what to do. 3 months had passed since the Zithrani fleet arrived in the Sol system, expecting war, and finding something completely different. The massive warships that had once been designed to rain destruction on Earth now floated peacefully in orbit around Mars, their weapons being carefully removed and replaced with scientific instruments. Not all the Zithrani had accepted the human offer. Commander Threx and about 2,000 of the most traditional warriors had chosen to leave, taking a portion of the fleet to seek their fortunes elsewhere in the galaxy. Admiral Cole had kept her word and let them go without any attempt to stop them or harm them, but the rest had stayed. Millions of Zithrani who were tired of the old ways, who wanted something different for themselves and their children, had chosen to take a chance on this strange new future. The first families to set foot on Earth landed in a valley in the Colorado mountains. The humans had built a settlement there, simple structures designed to house the newcomers while they adjusted to life on a planet. It was nothing like the steel corridors of the generation ships. There were trees and grass and a river that sparkled in the sunlight. There was a sky that changed colors as the day passed. There was fresh air that smelled of pine and flowers. A young Zithrani girl named Veth stepped out of the transport ship and froze. She was only 8 years old, born on the Eternal Conquest, and she had never seen anything like this. The sky stretched out above her in an endless blue dome. The grass beneath her feet was soft and cool. Birds sang in the trees, making sounds she had never heard before. She started to cry. Her mother rushed to her side, worried that something was wrong. But Veth wasn't crying from sadness or fear. She was crying because for the first time in her life, she felt something she couldn't explain. Later, humans would teach her the word for it. Joy. Commander Velthos, who was now simply called Velthos, watched the families explore their new home. He stood with Admiral Cole on a small hill overlooking the settlement. Below them, Zithrani children ran through the grass with human children, their laughter mixing in the mountain air. Parents who had known nothing but war looked around with wonder at a world where fighting wasn't necessary. "I still don't understand," Velthos admitted. "We came to destroy you. We would have killed every human on this planet without hesitation. Why are you helping us?" Cole thought about the question for a long moment before answering. 6,000 years ago, she said, humanity was not so different from the Zithrani. We were violent and aggressive. We conquered each other constantly. We enslaved entire peoples and felt no shame. If your ancestors had arrived back then, we probably would have done exactly what you planned to do to us. She turned to look at him. But we grew. We made terrible mistakes, and we learned from them. We hurt each other in ways that still haunt us, but we found ways to heal. We discovered that strength doesn't have to mean domination. That power doesn't have to mean cruelty. That a species can be dangerous without being destructive. Below them, a Zithrani elder was sitting in a garden with a group of human children gathered around him. He was telling them stories of his people, tales of the long journey through the stars. The children listened with wide eyes, asking questions, wanting to know more. It was such a simple scene, but it represented something that would have been impossible just a few months ago. "When your fleet appeared," Cole continued, "we laughed because we saw ourselves in you. We remembered who we used to be, and we realized that we had a choice. We could destroy you and prove that we hadn't really changed at all. Or we could offer you the chance to grow, the same chance we had given ourselves over 6,000 years. And if we waste this chance?" Velthos asked. "If my people return to their old ways, then we'll deal with that if it happens. But I don't think it will. Your people are tired, Velthos. They've been fighting for so long that they've forgotten there are other ways to live. Now they're learning. Now they're seeing that the universe has more to offer than conquest and death." Over the following weeks, the transformation continued. Human doctors worked with Zithrani physicians to cure diseases that had plagued the aliens for generations. Human engineers taught Zithrani technicians how to build things that help people instead of hurting them. Human teachers welcomed Zithrani students into schools where they learned alongside children from dozens of worlds. Dr. Maria Santa spent her days helping the newcomers adjust to their new reality. She sat with families who struggled to understand why they weren't fighting anymore. She counseled warriors who felt lost without enemies to defeat. She celebrated with children who discovered music and art and play for the first time. The hardest part, she told Captain Henry Liu one evening, is helping them believe they deserve this. 6,000 years of being told their only value comes from conquest. It takes time to unlearn that. "They're learning, though," Henry replied. He pointed to a group of Zithrani teenagers who were learning to paint with a human artist. Their pictures were rough and untrained, but their faces showed a concentration and peace that would have been impossible on the warships. They're finding new ways to matter. On the generation ships orbiting Mars, the conversion process was almost complete. The massive vessels that had once carried warriors to battle were becoming something new. Their weapons bays were becoming laboratories. Their troop barracks were becoming schools. Their battle bridges were becoming observation decks where anyone could come to look at the stars. Commander Rachel Torres, who had been among the first to face the Zithrani fleet, now commanded the joint human-Zithrani exploration mission to a distant star system. Her crew was half human and half Zithrani, working together to chart unknown space. They had already discovered 3 new habitable worlds and made contact with a peaceful species that the Zithrani would once have conquered without a second thought. "This is what we can do together," Rachel said during a transmission back to Earth. "Not just humans or Zithrani, but both working as one. We're stronger this way. We're better." Back on Earth, Velthos stood before a gathering of his people in the Colorado settlement. It was the anniversary of their arrival, 1 year since they had come to conquer and stayed to learn. The crowd included warriors who had once dreamed of glory in battle and now taught their children to garden. It included scientists who had built weapons and now built hospitals. It included elders who had lost everything they believed in and found something new to believe in. 1 year ago, Velthos said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd, "We came to this world as conquerors. We expected to find weakness and instead found strength. We expected to find enemies and instead found friends. We expected to end humanity's story, and instead we became part of it." He looked out at the faces watching him, alien and human side by side. "Our ancestors spent 6,000 years preparing for war. They never imagined that we might find peace instead. They never dreamed that the greatest victory of the Zithrani people would not be a battle won, but a battle never fought." Admiral Cole stood in the back of the crowd, watching with quiet satisfaction. Beside her, Maria Santos wiped tears from her eyes. "Do you think it will last?" Maria asked. Cole smiled. "I think it has a chance. That's more than we had 6,000 years ago. That's more than anyone gets most of the time." Far above them, the stars burned with ancient light. Somewhere out there, Commander Threx and his traditionalist warriors were searching for someone to conquer. Somewhere out there, other species were rising and falling, fighting the same battles humanity had once fought. But here, in this valley on this small blue planet, something new was growing. 2 species that should have been enemies were learning to be family. A war that should have destroyed worlds had become a friendship that might shape the galaxy. And on warm summer nights, when the children of both species ran together through the grass and looked up at the sky full of stars, they saw not enemies to defeat or territories to conquer, but wonders to explore and adventures to share. The universe was vast and full of mysteries. Now they would face those mysteries together. This was not an ending. It was a beginning, the first chapter of a story that would be told for thousands of years to come. And somewhere, in the spaces between the stars, the future was smiling.